Okay, now I have completed the cleanup on the edges of my PCB board. So now it's got nice smooth edges, and you can see no perforation, nice and smooth. But one thing I need to do is get my fingerprints off of it. So what they recommend is 99% isopropyl alcohol. If you have any cuts on your hand when you do this, it's gonna hurt, and like hurt bad. So I just dab a little bit on a paper towel. Try not to get any on any weird places on your hand, because I'm telling you, it'll hurt. Experience. And just kind of rub everything down nice and smooth before we get started. That gets any leftover chemicals from the plant off of it. And then when I'm done with that, I'm just going to insert it into my PCB board holder. Now I've already checked that if I put it in this way, I can still access all the slots that I need to do. So the first thing that's going to happen is we have to install our fixed resistors that are going on this board. Fixed resistors are a pretty easy way to get your start. They're pretty forgiving when you go to work with them. So in the book here, it tells you a list of slot numbers and what resistors to put in. I don't know if it's any easier to see it this way. So we're going to start with slot 6 and 7 and put some 2.21K resistors. So again, I have to go up to my things, make sure I get them 2.21K. So I have identified the correct resistors, and it calls for 2 of them, one to go in slot 6 and one to go in slot 7. So I'm just going to hold and pull the tape off that holds them together. And then I'm going to give them just a little bit of a bend right near the resistor so that I can get them started. And it's, again, that's slot R6 and R7. So I'll line up each end of the pin. It does not matter right now which direction this goes. So I'm going to line up each end of the pin in the slot, and I'm going to push it all the way down until it's flush with the board. Give it a nice tug on the back. Make sure it seats in that slot well. And then, as you can see on the back here, turn it this way so you can see it from both cameras maybe. I'm going to take the pins and just kind of fold them down out of the way. Now, why do I fold them down like that? Well, I fold them down so that they hold it in place. Now it's not going anywhere on the front. It's held nice and secure. So I've got it folded down. And then the back is where I'm going to do the soldering here in a minute. So both in slot 6 and slot 7, again, we're going to do the 2.1K, a little bend, give a little bend. Now we're going in slot 7. Put that in and bend it out. So now I've got 2 in the bent out position. I really like this little thing. Makes holding everything much easier. So now we're going to go in slot R10, which is over here, with a 1.5K resistor. So I'm going to go with my 1.5, I believe, is right here. Yep, 1.5. And again, I'm checking, always checking with this book that we're going 1.5 resistor into R10. Get the bend. Slot it in. Again, I repeat, on these resistors, it does not matter which end goes in first. It's totally fine. Direction doesn't matter. They're not polarized. And finally, a 750K in R11, which is actually up here on the board this time. So 750K. That's probably over here somewhere. 750K. This is one of the stronger resistors that we have in the pack. A little bit stiffer lead wire on this one just because it's stronger. 750K, double checking. And that's going in slot R11. Again, pull that from the back, get it nice and snug. Bend them down out of the way so they're not in the way. So you can see from the back. And then I have two more, the R13 and R14. These are not listed per se on your diagram officially. They are matched. We talked about this at the beginning of the video to the transistor. So R13 is a 100K and R14 is a 340K. It has been matched to that transistor. So I'm going to pull the resistors out, leave the transistor alone. But I know that R13, slot R13, needs to be a 100K, which is this one. So slot R13 is a 100K. So it slots in right there. Gets bent out of the way. And R14 is a 340K. No, you can't read these little tiny letters. I barely can myself. The magnifying glass for me has to come out for the diodes later though. They're super hard to read. Okay, R14 bent out of the way. Bent out of the way. So now we confirm R6, R7, R10, R11, R13, and 14. And we want to make sure that they're all pushed nice and flush. And then we look at the back. Here's where the real work is going to begin. You finally get to solder your first little bit. So here is solder. This little package conveniently has a hole in it where you can stream it out and keep your hands safe from getting burnt. So a little bit of solder. Again, this is super cheap. This whole pack is super cheap. So one of the first things you want to do if you're going to solder something is actually what we call tin the tip of the soldering iron. So I'm just going to take some solder and get it on the tip. Now you'll notice that there's a fair amount of smoke there. That smoke is called flux. Flux is what helps the metal. This is a wet sponge, by the way. What helps the metal stick to the other metals. Flux is important to make everything work. It also displaces oxygen in your lungs. So it's good to do this in a well-ventilated area. If you didn't notice just a second ago, I put a fan right here. And the fan is actually blowing the smoke out of the way. It's another reason I'm in my garage, so I don't fill the house with bad gases. If you're in your classroom, you've got pretty good ventilation. I just recommend a fan to blow it out of your direct lung capacity. So what we're looking for is actually to make a Hershey kiss of solder right where those connection joints meet. So here are 4 examples of bad solder joints, and we're looking to make the one over here, the good one. Now that's after the lead wire is clipped, but we just want a nice little Hershey kiss. So now that I've had some solder on the tip of my iron, I'm gonna hold the solder down close. I get the solder on there first, and we're just gonna heat that joint just a little bit, and then push some solder on there. Sometimes you kind of have to go at it from the side. You can hit the tip and then like stroke up, and that will actually help the solder to rise. up that lead joint so you can see that first one down here has been soldered. Nice little Hershey kiss. Of solder. You don't want to get too much because if you get too much, it's going to bleed over into the next circuit, and then you're actually shorting your circuit out, and you don't want to do that. So try to avoid that. You're just going to go down the row here and solder each one on. I got a little much there, but it's not too bad. Sorry, I'm not talking much. This requires a little bit of concentration. You just want to make sure you see that whole slot get filled up with solder. And then if it's all filled up with solder, then you just take it and, like I said, like stream it back up that lead wire, and that'll kind of help make that Hershey kiss. Now, we're going to go back and cut here in just a minute with those side clippers, all the lead wires. So don't be afraid if there's a little extra there. You can actually trim it off. Let's see if I can get that at an angle where you can see it a little better, hopefully. There was that. The final move that I just did was once I get enough on there, that's where I'm streaming it back up the lead just a little bit. Sorry, I got to twist it so I can see it. Not quite there yet. Okay, now the last one, because it's a little hard to get to, I'm going to bend these back up. Let's get them out of the way. It's okay. They're going to bend where the solder joint is now because the solder is actually stiffer than that wire. So I'm just going to take bend them back out of the way. Now I'm going to come over here and I'm actually just going to brush some of that off. And I've got a clean solder tip there while it rests. So what we have just done is completed installing and soldering the actual parts in. So now I'm going to unclip this from my solder board. It's spring holder. I'm going to get my side trimmers, which are right here. And we're just going to, first of all, show you what those completed solder joints look like. Show you down here on this camera too. See those little Hershey kisses. I'm just going to come in and trim off the excess pretty close to the actual board. For safety's sake on this one, I'm going to use the old safety glasses because sometimes when you pop these, they actually go flying if you're not careful. So I'm just gonna kind of get up and under there, pop that off. They cut really easy, so it does not require a lot of force at all. See, like that. If you don't have safety glasses on, those can pop you. Also, if you're a person who, like me, does everything with their tongue, like in their mouth all the time, like when you're getting specific about stuff, I recommend trying to curb that habit on this, because I've actually may have eaten a piece or two of solder from like, oh no. So, I'm just saying, if you're one of those people, I know I am, you might want to curb that habit for this project. Now there are a bunch of little leads everywhere. You don't need those anymore. Set those aside, they're trash. Now, here are my solder joints. So as you can see, they've got that little bit of a Hershey kiss kind of shape, and the goal is that they aren't touching any of the other joints. That's the biggest thing. You want that little pocket to be full, and you don't want them touching any other joints. So you can see they are not touching any other joints. Everything on those should be complete, and we have just finished instruction page number 8, which was the first of our actual solder joints over here. So now we need to move to our second board to be able to solder the joints onto the second board, and this works the same way the other board did. First, we're just going to kind of make sure that by clipping it into the holder here, we're not going to be messing up anything. R1 and R2. So they're there. Those are C's. So I'm actually going to clip this board in this way this time. To hold it, because that's going to free up my room to get to all my R's. So there's my board. I can flip it over, nice and easy. No painstake there. So in slot R1 and R2, we're going to put some 56.2 ohm resistors. These are 56.2s right here. Again, we're going to pull it out of the tape. Give it a little bend. Give it a little bend. R1 and R2 are both 56.2. So there's our 2. Pull it from the back. Flex them so they stay in place. R1. Where did I see R1? There we go. Oh, right there. R1's going in. Pull from the back. Pull from the back. Lock in place. So there are two 56.2K resistors there. 100K. 200s. Those are 10Ks. We want hundreds. Yes, hundreds. R3 and R4 are going to be 100s. R3 and R4 are right there and right there. It's all labeled on the board, so just make sure you're reading carefully and you should be fine. R3. Down, clip them in. Everything's looking good thus far. Our 5 is a 3.92K. Okay. Five is right here on this side. Okay, our 16 and 17 are 10Ks. You notice our stack of stuff over here is quickly diminishing because resistors are the most popular part of this build. So R16 and R17. Looking for R16 first. There. Are attached. R17. And then the final one is a 20K, a single 20K that's going into slot R18. And we only have 3 actual resistors left in the whole build at this point. So R18 is going in here. Pull it down nice and tight as always. And then bend it back. And then once again, we're going to do the same thing we did before, soldering all these in. So I'm just going to take my time and work through it here. And hopefully you can see a bit. I'll pull this back down. hopefully you can see a bit of what I'm doing here. I always kind of like work from the far side back to me. So that's what I'm going to do.